Shabbat Shalom. The cute little 6-year-old with ponytails sat in the first row listening intently as the school teacher told the story of Gulliver. The unbelievable stories larger than life of the adventures of the traveler as told by Irish author Jonathan Swift. The story, written in 1726, struck a chord with the child who listened intently. And as the story neared to an end, she stood up, threw her arm in the air, and said, "My dad did that too." Later, to her great embarrassment, she realized that her father had been telling her the story of Gulliver's travels in the first person since she was a little girl. She could relate to it, she felt connected to it, and when she heard the school teacher telling the story, she thought the teacher was talking about her very own father. It inspired awe, inspiration. It was a big, bold story. That is similar to our Parsha this week, Parshat Bo. Bold. It's big, it's bold. This takes us back to a course that I have been teaching called Basic Judaism, the very first session of which talks about belief in God. There's atheism, which doesn't believe in God at all. There's deism, that believes that there is a creator, but that creator created the universe, but doesn't have any involvement in it. And then there is the Jewish view of God and our relationship with our creator and the creator's relationship with humankind. The creator is very much connected to us in this narrative and cares about us. We can see this in the very first of the 10 Commandments, otherwise known in Hebrew, Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 statements. The very first statement says, "I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage." It doesn't say, "I'm the Lord your God who created the universe." It says, "I am the Lord your God, and this is your connection to me." A very big, important event. The Shabbat Kidush commemorates 2 events. Yes, it commemorates the creation of the world in 6 days and God's rest from that creation, but it also shows in the Kidush that we recall the exodus from Egypt. It's sort of like the difference between birth and B'nai Mitzvah. Birth, the creation of the world. We are looked after and coddled by our parents. We don't really have any responsibility for the first 12 or 13 years of our lives. When B'nai Mitzvah comes along, we are given responsibility. We are also free to choose our own actions. This is very similar to the narrative of the Jewish people. We came into Egypt as a tribe. We left Egypt as a nation. But it took us 40 years of wandering in the desert to assume what that actually meant to be free. And it was really hard for the Jewish people in the beginning because God needed to provide us with food. We didn't know how to fend for ourselves. In a state of bondage in Egypt, we were told what to do. So the exodus from Egypt was our birth as a people. Actually, our bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah as a people. It had to be a major event. It had to be something that would remain in the psyche of the Jewish people for all of eternity. It was something that wasn't going to happen again. And in Parshat Bo, when we speak about the plagues, God talks about the plagues that will befall Egypt. It says, "There shall be a loud cry in all of the land of Egypt, such as never been, nor will ever be again." So this is a big deal. This is something that's not going to happen again. The act of the redemption of the Exodus came from God. We were not yet a free people, and we did not know how to take action for ourselves. Now, how could this commotionary event be transmitted to future generations? First of all, what do I mean by a commotionary event? The communication specialist, Roger Mukeli, who I quoted many times in my thesis, came up with the concept that people have a hard time changing their opinions unless they have an experience that is very powerful, that gets them to look at things differently. The Exodus from Egypt obviously is one of those events. It's big, it's bold, it's something that left us awestruck. It took us to the state of a monotheistic people, a people with laws and rules, a people responsible for their actions. So how do we transmit this? So first of all, you know that I'm a specialist in communications. I'm always looking at how do we market this? How do we transmit this? What is our marketing mix going to be? So first of all, to whom does this have to be transmitted? It says in the Parsha, you will observe this as an institution for all time, for you and your descendants. And when you enter the land that the Lord has given you, you shall observe this rite. What rite are we talking about? It's the Passover sacrifice for the Lord, because he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt, and he saved our houses. And this is something that we are supposed to communicate, to transmit to our generations that follow. But when do we do this? This is important. What's the timing? First of all, we remind ourselves about this twice daily when we say the Shema. We speak about it weekly when we recite the Kiddush, as I mentioned earlier. And of course, yearly at the Passover Seder, where we literally try to experience what happened by telling it in the first person. And where do we do this? Well, the instructions are given in the Shema that we recite twice daily. So, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions which I charge you on this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are walking on your way, when you lie down, when you get up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and a symbol on your forehead, referring to tefillin. Inscribe them of the doorposts of your house and upon your gates, talking about the mezuzah that we put on our doors. So we have a very specific place that we put them as a symbol, and a way and a time that we have to talk about them. Now, how do we do it? First of all, how do we transmit this important story of the birth of our nation and our relationship to God? It's a big event, it's a bold event, and it's kind of like the Gulliver story. It has to be big and powerful, and it has to remain in the psyche of our children. How do we do that? The plagues were the way that God decided to show a big, bold testimony of his commitment to the people. I sort of have this image in my head of this couple on their first date at the fair, and the fellow takes this big hammer and he smashes this thing and rings the bell. He's not doing it to show anything to himself or impress anybody but the girl he's taking out. God didn't do the plagues for the Egyptians to prove something. If God would have wanted to take us out of Egypt, he didn't have to do all of that. He could have simply made Pharaoh soften his heart. He purposefully wanted to do these big, bold plagues so we as a people would remember it. The Lord says to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of the courtiers in order that I may display my signs, and that you may recount in the hearing of your child and of your child's child how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and how I displayed my signs to them, in order that then they may know that I am the Lord." The plagues, they weren't meant for Pharaoh. God wanted to show that God meant business. But he also says, I'm never going to do this again. I haven't done it before. I won't do it again. God acts on our behalf. But after the Exodus, when we become a free people, we must take responsibility for ourselves. Many of you may wonder why God was able to do all of these wondrous, huge miracles to extract us from Egypt. Yet today there is poverty, disease, and hunger. The difference is that when we were taken out of Egypt, we weren't really playing our role as a partner in Tikkun Olam. Once we were taken out of Egypt, God also wanted us to play a role in perfecting the universe. All of the resources are there for us to discover them, for us to distribute them with equity. But if we are going to transmit this heritage to our children, it has to be big, it has to be bold, it has to be powerful. So there's something to talk about, something that strikes awe, something that will continue to burn brightly for future generations. Baba Saleh, the Jewish Moroccan sage, said that we must speak about the Exodus in a loud and strong voice to rise over the chatter so that it will be noticed. In modern communication, we talk about the problem of media glut. There's so much information out there. It has to be big and bold and powerful for people to take notice. We need to help connect the story, as my grandfather did when he told the story of Gulliver in the first person to my mother. God brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand, a bang, not a whimper. And to conclude, I want to tell you a lovely story about my niece. A couple of years ago at the Passover Seder, as we were recounting the story of the Exodus, she raised her hand and she said to my father, "Remember, Zeta? Remember when we crossed the sea?" And that is the way that the plagues are supposed to inspire us. They are supposed to remind us that God has involvement in our world and in our lives, and that we must share our heritage proudly with our children. And with that, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom and good health and happiness for 2022.